Okay, so have you ever walked into a shoe store and thought, I wonder what it would be like to work here or even run this place?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Especially when you see those limited edition releases and the lines around the block, you think there's got to be some serious management going on behind the scenes.
Right. It's not just about keeping the shoe boxes straight. So today we're diving deep into what it really takes to be a shoe and leather accessories shop manager using RoleCatcher's career guide as our main source.
And they've broken it down in a fascinating way because they go beyond just the basic job description. They get into the different experience levels, the
Yeah.
skills you need, even potential interview questions. It's super in-depth.
Love that. And stick around because later on we'll uncover some surprising alternative career paths based on the skills this job develops. It's not all about selling shoes.
Oh, trust me, I've seen firsthand how the skills you learn in this kind of fast-paced retail environment can translate to some unexpected places. But first, let's get into RoleCatcher's breakdown, shall we?
Let's do it. So they start with the entry-level position, a sales associate, which I feel like most of us have some experience with, right? Helping customers, maybe getting talked into buying those overpriced shoe inserts.
Uh-huh. Yep, been there. But what's interesting is RoleCatcher emphasizes that even at this stage, it's crucial to be observant, not just of customers, but of how the whole shop floor operates. Which brands are popular, what kind of questions people ask.
Mhm.
You're basically training your retail senses.
It's like absorbing all that info almost by osmosis, which makes sense as you move up to, say, an assistant manager. Rollcatcher talks about how this role is big on training staff, but also on analyzing sales data, which is where I imagine those 61% monitoring skills come in, right?
Exactly. It's not just about watching employees. It's about understanding the why behind the numbers. Like, let's say you notice a certain style of boot is selling really well, but only in one size. A good assistant manager doesn't just blindly order more. They investigate.
Okay, so it's like detective work almost.
100%. Is it a trend they saw online? Is there a particular demographic buying them? Then you use that data to inform everything from displays to staff training to really capitalize on that little win.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but it makes so much sense. And then from there, you've got the shop manager role where the pressure's really on.
Oh, for sure. Now you're overseeing everything. Inventory, visual merchandising, hiring, even local marketing. The buck stops with you, especially during those peak seasons.
And speaking of those peak seasons, Rollcatcher doesn't sugarcoat the demands there. Long hours are a given. But what are we really talking about here? Paint us a picture.
Think back to school shopping rushes with lines out the door. And you're not just managing the customers, you're also making sure the stockroom isn't completely bare. Or the holiday season where every customer interaction feels high stakes. And then on top of that, you've got
Difficult customers, I bet those take on a whole new meaning when you're the manager.
absolutely. It's
Don't
not
they?
just about smoothing over a return anymore. You're setting the tone for your whole team. It's about de-escalation, finding creative solutions on the fly. And sometimes it's knowing when to stand your ground on a policy. These are skills that, honestly, they go way beyond retail.
It's like you need nerves of steel on top of all the other skills.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
But that actually brings us to something I found really interesting. RoleCatcher highlights the importance of soft skills in this role. Yeah,
Yeah.
way more than I would have thought.
Yeah, like what specifically are we talking about here?
Well, persuasion, for one, you're not just selling shoes, you're selling an experience.
Yeah.
And that takes some finesse. You got to know how to read people, understand their needs, and then tailor your approach accordingly.
Right. Like, are they looking for a bargain? Are they looking for a status symbol? Or maybe they just need a good pair of walking shoes.
Exactly. And then there's negotiation, not just with customers on price maybe, but also with suppliers, with your own team, even upper management if you're trying to get more resources for your store.
So it's like this constant dance of give and take.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, you've got to know how to motivate your team, especially during those crazy busy times when everyone's stressed and exhausted.
That's where those leadership skills really come into play.
100%.
Yeah.
You're not just managing tasks, you're managing people.
Yeah.
Their emotions, their aspirations. It's about creating a positive and productive work environment, even when things get chaotic.
Which I imagine is easier said than done.
Or for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely a learned skill. But that's why RoleCatcher dedicates a whole section to interview questions for this role. Because they know it's not just about your experience on paper, it's about how you handle those interpersonal dynamics.
And nailing that interview is key, especially with how competitive the retail landscape is these days.
Speaking of competition, there's another layer RoleCatcher brings up that I think is super relevant now, the increasing use of automation in hiring.
Oh, yeah, those applicant tracking systems.
Exactly. You're not just impressing the hiring manager anymore. Your resume might have to get past an algorithm first.
Which sounds kind of terrifying, honestly. How do you even do that? Like, how do you make sure a robot thinks you're qualified for the job?
You have to think like a robot. Honestly, RoleCatcher has some really good advice on this.
Mm.
It's all about mirroring the language of the job description. Like if they use the term visual merchandising.
You don't want to say, I'm really good at making displays.
Exactly. Even if that's basically what you did, you got to use their words. And then don't just list your tasks, quantify your accomplishments. So instead of saying managed inventory, you'd say something like reduced inventory shrinkage by 15% by implementing a new tracking system.
Show him, don't tell him.
Exactly. Because that algorithm is looking for those key words and those quantifiable results.
That's such a good tip. Okay, so let's say you've aced the interview, you've outsmarted the robots. You're officially a shoe and leather accessories shop manager. Congratulations.
Champagne popping.
But now let's talk about the reality of the job. RoleCatcher does a good job of laying out both the pros and the cons, like we've touched on the long hours, but what are some of the other challenges you faced in your career?
Honestly, one of the biggest things that surprised me was the emotional toll it could take.
Really?
Yeah, retail can be a roller coaster,
Yeah.
especially if you're the kind of person who gets invested in your work and your team.
You're not just selling shoes, you're building relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when things go wrong, like a new strategy falls flat or you have to let go of an employee,
Yeah.
it can really hit you hard.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that there are humans behind every transaction.
Right. And it's not just the customers. It's your employees, too. You're mentoring them, coaching them sometimes, even having to be the bad guy. It takes a toll, for sure.
But then I imagine those wins feel even sweeter.
Oh, absolutely. When you see an employee grow and succeed, or you turn a difficult customer into a loyal one, those moments are priceless.
That makes total sense. And it kind of ties into something else RoleCatcher talks about, the transferable skills you gain from this job. Because it's not just about selling shoes, right? It's about the foundation it builds for other paths.
100%. In fact, they highlight some really interesting alternative careers based on those skills. Some of them are more obvious, like moving from a shoe shop to managing a different kind of retail environment.
Right, like a clothing boutique or... Exactly. You're still working with customers, managing inventory, creating displays. Those skills translate pretty directly. But then they get into some more unexpected connections.
Oh, like what?
Well, one that caught my eye was secondhand shops.
Really? I wouldn't have thought of that. How does that connect?
Well, think about it. You're curating a collection of unique items. You have to understand what makes something desirable, even if it's pre-owned. And you're negotiating with both buyers and sellers. Those are all skills you hone in a high-end shoe shop.
When you put it like that, it makes total sense. So someone with this experience might thrive in completely different fields, like antique dealing, maybe.
Totally. Or even art gallery management, event planning, where you're managing logistics, coordinating with vendors, handling those last-minute crises. The skills overlap more than you'd think. That's amazing. It's like this hidden web of career paths that you'd never know about unless you dug a little deeper.
Exactly. And that's what I love about RoleCatcher's approach. They don't just tell you about one job. They open your eyes to a whole range of possibilities.
It's not just about finding a job. It's about figuring out what you're truly good at and then seeing where those skills can take you.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening who's curious about retail management or even just exploring their career options, I highly recommend checking out RoleCatcher's in-depth guides. You might be surprised at what you discover.
I'm definitely going to be spending some time on their site now. This deep dive has completely changed my perspective on what it means to be a shoe and leather accessories shop manager. And who knows, maybe it sparked an idea for someone listening out there.
You never know where your next career move will come from. That's the beauty of it.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and be sure to tune in next time when we explore another fascinating career path.
Until next time.